Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be looking at cybercrime in India. And you guys gave us a great source, an interview with Amit Dubey, like top cybercrime investigator.
It's really interesting because Dubey's not just talking theory. He's actually solved these cases, which gives us a really unique perspective.
Yeah. It's like we've got a detective walking us through like how these crimes happen.
Exactly.
And what we can learn from them.
Yeah, and he starts by talking about this thing called the digital arrest scam.
Ooh.
Have you heard about this?
I haven't. This sounds pretty intense.
It is. So imagine you get a call from someone claiming to be a police officer, and they're like, hey, there's a warrant out for your arrest, but you can pay a fine to avoid going to jail.
Oh, gosh. I can see how people would like totally panic.
Yeah.
In that situation. Just do whatever the caller says.
Absolutely. Dubey says these criminals are banking on that, like exploiting our fear and anxiety to make us act impulsively.
So it's not even just about like technology. It's about understanding human psychology.
Absolutely. That's actually like a theme that he emphasizes throughout the interview. He says one of the key principles of his work is to think like a criminal.
Oh, wow.
To understand what motivates them and what vulnerabilities they're looking to exploit.
Oh, that's so interesting. It's like a game of cat and mouse.
Yeah.
Trying to stay like one step ahead of these scammers.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, they are getting increasingly sophisticated too. He talks about how something as simple as a Google search can be used to target individuals.
Wait, really? Like my Google searches can lead me to becoming a victim.
He gives an example of a businessman who was, after the pandemic hit, he was looking to diversify his company. So he was doing research on chemicals on Google.
Right.
Pretty, standard stuff.
Yeah.
But it seems like someone was watching.
Oh, no. So what happened? Was his computer hacked or something?
No, not exactly. It was more insidious than that. He got an email from a woman in Dubai claiming that, she'd been referred by his friend and suggesting a partnership on a deal that sounded incredibly lucrative.
Oh, no. I see where this is going.
Yeah. It turned out to be completely fake. Like, the friend was a fabrication. The deal was bogus. She had even, created fake websites and email addresses to make it all look legit.
Oh, my God.
And the businessman lost, a significant amount of money.
That's terrifying. It's like, how do we even know what's real anymore?
Right.
It feels like everything online could be a potential trap.
It really does. And that's why Dubey, really stresses the importance of being vigilant and skeptical, especially when it comes to, unsolicited emails or messages.
Right.
Always double check that sender's email address. Look for inconsistencies and never click on links you're not absolutely sure about.
So it's almost like we need to develop a sixth sense for spotting these scams online.
I know, right?
Like, how do we even know?
It's not quite a sixth sense, but he does offer some practical advice. He calls it link scanning.
Link scanning. Okay, interesting. What exactly is that?
It's essentially checking the legitimacy of websites before you click on them. There are tools and browser extensions that can help you scan links for potential malware or phishing attempts.
Gotcha. So if something seems even a little bit off, better to err on the side of caution and scan it first.
Exactly. And he also says, if you're dealing with a company or individual for the first time, always verify their contact information independently. Don't just trust what you see on their website or social media profiles.
Right.
Do your own digging.
So we've got to be proactive about our online security.
Yeah.
It's not just about relying on antivirus software or firewalls.
Exactly.
It's about being aware and taking those extra steps to protect ourselves.
It's like developing those healthy digital habits.
Right.
And, this is especially important when you consider the ease with which criminals can exploit our data.
Oh, yeah. You mean things like SIM swapping?
Yes, exactly.
I've heard about that, but I'm not really sure how it works.
So SIM swapping is basically when criminals hijack your phone number.
Hijack my phone number? How is that even possible?
They trick your mobile carrier into transferring your number to a new SIM card that they control.
What?
They might use social engineering tactics to manipulate customer service reps, or they might exploit vulnerabilities in the carrier system.
Okay, so once they have my phone number, then what can they do with it?
That's where it gets really scary. They now have access to everything linked to your phone. Your bank accounts, your social media, your email, even your two-factor authentication codes.
So they could potentially drain my bank account, lock me out of my social media, and basically steal my entire online identity.
That's the danger. And what's even more concerning is it can happen without you even realizing it. Like he says, people often don't notice they've been SIM swapped until it's too late.
Oh, gosh. That's a total nightmare scenario. So how can we protect ourselves from something like that?
He says to be extra vigilant about any unusual activity on your phone, like sudden drops in service, unexpected text messages from your carrier. Those could be warning signs.
So if I notice anything fishy like that, I should contact my carrier immediately.
Absolutely. And be very wary of anyone calling or texting you asking for personal information or security codes. Like, legitimate companies will never ask for that info over the phone or via text.
Right, it's like that old saying, trust no one.
Right.
Well, maybe not no one, but definitely, like, be cautious online.
Absolutely. And you know what's funny? He actually shared an anecdote about how he almost fell for a scam call himself.
Really?
Yeah. They pretended to be from his mobile carrier, and they were claiming that there were new regulations and he needed to, like, update his SIM card or risk losing his service.
Oh, gosh. Even a mid-doobie almost got scammed.
Yeah.
That's kind of reassuring, actually.
Really?
It makes me feel like it's not just me who's, like, vulnerable to these things.
Oh, no, not at all. Like, these criminals are very good at what they do, and they're constantly coming up with new ways to trick people.
So what happened with Doobie? How did he know it was a scam?
So they were using something called SMS spoofing, where they send a text message that looks like it's from your carrier, but he was savvy enough to recognize the red flag, so he contacted his carrier directly, using their official contact information. And sure enough, it was a scam. It's a good reminder for all of us to always verify independently and don't just blindly trust any calls or messages, even if they seem to be coming from like a legit company.
So we've got, like, link scanning, we've got verifying information. It feels like there's a lot to keep track of.
There is, but a lot of it boils down to just being aware of, like, the tactics these criminals use, like this whole new thing with eSIMs. Have you heard about those?
I've heard the term, but I don't really know what they are.
So they're basically virtual SIM cards. Like, you don't need a physical card. It's all, like, software-based.
Is it, like, good or bad?
Well, it can be convenient, but it also, creates new opportunities for scammers.
Oh.
He says criminals are using SMS spoofing and social engineering to trick people into enabling eSIMs on their devices without realizing that they're actually handing over control of their phone number.
So they make it sound like you're, like, updating your service or something, but actually you're giving them access to your phone and everything on it.
Exactly. And, since eSIMs are relatively new, a lot of people aren't really familiar with them, which makes them, easier targets for these scams.
Okay, so we've got to be, like, extra careful with anything related to our SIM cards, whether they're physical or virtual.
Right. And it's not just SIM swapping, He also talked about email spoofing, where criminals send emails that look like they're from your bank or a government agency or even like a trusted friend.
Oh, yeah. I get those all the time, like the ones that say, your account's been compromised, or, you need to update your password immediately.
Those are classic, like, phishing scams.
Yeah.
And he says to always check the sender's email address really carefully, like look for misspellings, inconsistencies, anything that seems off.
And I guess if it creates that sense of urgency, like you have to act right now or something terrible is going to happen, that's probably a red flag too.
Absolutely. Like, your bank is never going to send you an email threatening to shut down your account if you don't click on a link right this second.
So what else can we do to, like, protect ourselves from these email scams?
He said, be wary of any email that pressures you to take immediate action. And it's always a good idea to, like, hover your mouse over any links in the email before you click on them, just to see the actual URL. And if the URL looks suspicious, don't click on it.
These criminals are relentless. It feels like they're always, like, one step ahead.
It can definitely feel that way, but remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand their tactics, the better equipped we are to defend ourselves. And that's where Dubé's work with the police gets really interesting. Like, he talked about how data analysis is becoming a crucial tool in solving crimes, even like murders.
No way. Data can help solve murders. Tell me more about that.
He gave this example of a woman who was found dead in her apartment complex. And initially, it looked like a suicide. But when they examined the data from her smartwatch, they discovered something interesting. Her heart rate had spiked significantly a few hours before her death.
So it wasn't a suicide after all.
Exactly. The data from her smartwatch basically revealed a struggle, something that wouldn't have been apparent otherwise.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like her smartwatch became a silent witness.
I know. And by analyzing that data, along with other digital evidence, they were able to piece together what really happened and ultimately, bring the perpetrator to justice.
So it's not just about protecting our data from criminals. It's also about how that data could be used for good.
Absolutely. And, he shared another case, a young man found murdered near a railway track. And this one was particularly challenging because, the police had interviewed like dozens of suspects, but the case was just going nowhere.
So how did they finally break through?
So Dubé started by analyzing the victim's digital footprint.
Yeah.
He looked at his Gmail account, his location history, his
Yeah.
app usage.
And what did he find?
He discovered that the victim had installed a gay dating app,
Oh, wow.
which revealed a whole side of his life that the police weren't even aware of. This was a big break in the case.
So they started looking into his relationships on the app.
Yes. And by accessing the victim's chats and, analyzing his communications, they were able to identify his last contact before his death.
Uh-huh.
And it was someone who had been in a secret and volatile relationship with the victim.
And this person turned out to be the murderer.
Yes. The digital evidence basically led them straight to the suspect, who eventually confessed to the crime.
That's amazing. It's every click, every message, every online interaction, it leaves a trace. And sometimes those traces can actually help bring justice.
It really is powerful. And he also mentioned this case that was solved incredibly quickly, an ATM robbery.
What? An ATM robbery? How do you manage to solve that one so fast?
So the police were under immense pressure to solve this case since, ATM robberies were on the rise. So they called in Dubé for his expertise. And he started by analyzing call records from the time of the robbery, just looking for any patterns or connections that could lead to the culprits.
What kind of patterns was he looking for?
Well, he was focused on calls that were made between people who were in close proximity to each other at the time of the robbery, assuming that the robbers would have been communicating during the crime.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. And it paid off. He identified 3 phone numbers that fit that pattern.
And those numbers led to the robbers.
They did. Dubé cross-referenced those numbers with, social media and other online data and quickly identified the suspects and their locations. He even found out that one of the suspects' father was a local politician.
What?
Which might explain why they thought they could get away with it.
That's some impressive detective work. It sounds like Dubé's a master at connecting the dots.
He is. He has this unique ability to analyze vast amounts of data and extract, meaningful insights that can help solve crimes.
Wow.
But, these cases also raise some important questions about the ethical implications of all this data collection and analysis.
That's a really good point. We've been talking about how data can be used to solve crimes, but what about the potential for misuse?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dubé, he acknowledges that concern. He says it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Right.
While data can be a powerful tool for good, it also has the potential to be abused.
For, surveillance or discrimination.
Exactly. That's why he emphasizes the importance of having, strong regulations and safeguards in place to make sure that data is used responsibly and ethically.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we use it.
Right. And that brings us to, perhaps the most complex and concerning aspect of cybercrime's future, the potential impact of artificial intelligence.
AI. Now that's a whole other level of complexity.
It really is. And Dubé had some pretty thought-provoking insights about how AI could change the landscape of cybercrime, both for better and for worse.
So is AI going to be our savior or our downfall?
It could be a bit of both, actually. On the one hand, he believes that AI could make scams even more sophisticated and difficult to detect.
I can see that. AI is already being used to create incredibly realistic deepfakes, those videos where you can make someone appear to say or do anything you want.
Right. He talked about AI-driven voice and video cloning, which is already quite advanced.
So you could get a call from someone who sounds and looks exactly like your mom, but it's actually a scammer using AI to mimic her.
That's the scary part. And as AI continues to develop, these deepfakes will only become more realistic, making it, harder and harder to distinguish between what's real and what's fake.
That's terrifying. It makes you question everything you see and hear online.
I know, it really does. And, this is why he cautions against over-reliance on AI for security.
Wait, so AI can actually be a vulnerability?
He's concerned about the potential for AI systems to be manipulated because of inherent biases in the data they're trained on.
Oh, so if the data used to train an AI is flawed or biased, then the AI itself could perpetuate those biases.
Exactly. And this could lead to all sorts of unintended consequences, from inaccurate risk assessments to discriminatory outcomes.
So AI is a tool, And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad. It depends on who's wielding it and what their intentions are.
I think that's a great way to put it. And he also brought up this idea of, the potential for AI to be used to create like incredibly convincing virtual companions.
Oh,
And how this could be used to like manipulate people emotionally. Imagine an AI that learns everything about you, your likes, dislikes, your vulnerabilities.
and then uses that knowledge to
Mm.
exploit you. Wow, that takes us into some pretty dark territory.
It does, and it highlights the importance of like thinking critically about the ethical implications of AI and making sure that we're developing and using this technology responsibly.
So AI is powerful, but it's not a magic bullet.
Exactly. And it's definitely not a replacement for, human intelligence and critical thinking.
So what's the takeaway here? What can we do to protect ourselves in this increasingly complex digital world?
Well, Debay stresses the importance of staying informed and being proactive about our, online security.
So that means strong passwords, two-factor authentication, being careful about what we share online, and keeping our software up to date.
All of that, yes. But he also emphasizes the importance of cultivating like a healthy skepticism.
Oh, okay.
Don't blindly trust everything you see or hear online. Verify information independently. And if something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
And, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
It really is like a digital jungle out there, and we have to learn how to navigate it safely.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And just like in a real jungle, you need like the right tools and knowledge to survive.
Doobie also mentioned something really interesting. He said one of the most important things we can do to protect ourselves is to simply be aware of our digital footprint.
Yes, he totally emphasized that. Like every click, every search, every online interaction, it leaves a trace, and those traces can be used by criminals to target us.
So we need to be mindful of what we're putting out there.
Exactly. Think before you click, think before you share, and just be aware of the information you're making available online.
It's almost like we need to develop a privacy mindset, just constantly being aware of the potential risks.
That's a good way to put it. It's not about being paranoid or anything. It's about being informed and making conscious choices about your online security.
So to sum it all up, what are the key takeaways from our deep dive into cybercrime in India with Amit Dubey?
I think the biggest one is just knowledge is power. The more we understand the tactics these criminals are using, the better equipped we'll be to defend ourselves.
And we can't just rely on technology to protect us. We need to be proactive and develop those healthy digital habits.
Absolutely. Strong passwords, two-factor authentication, being careful about what we share, all that is essential.
And we've got to be skeptical. Question everything and verify information independently.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions, even if it seems like, you should know the answer.
Better to be safe than sorry.
Exactly. And remember, cybercrime isn't just a problem for tech experts or law enforcement. It affects everyone.
Yeah, we all have a role to play in creating a safer digital world. Well, this has been a fascinating and eye-opening deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. Stay safe out there.
And that concludes our deep dive into cybercrime in India. We hope you found this information valuable and that it empowers you to navigate the digital world with confidence and awareness. Remember, stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay safe.